Good evening, it's Krill. Taking a look at uh, Captain Skill Rework. Going through here and gonna try to give you some of the stuff that I've figured out. Just express some of my ideas. This is just gonna be destroyer only, just to try to keep this video as concise as possible. Without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm looking at my Shimakaze captain. I've just went in and just reset every captain, or at least theoretically I have. Let's see if the link that Wargaming actually gave us works. So right away, if you guys have looked at previous builds that I've been using um, for torpedo boats, we're just going to break this down. Shimakaze, going to do talk about some of the basic options for torpedo boat builds, and we'll work it out for the gunboats and the different things as we get into the video. So starting at Shimakaze right now, um, you know, the first the 1 point skills we're looking at, you know, basically expert marksman, increased flooding. um, Are we able to take that? I guess we are. So, basically a modified version of Jack of all trades. It's cheaper, expert loader, incoming fire alert. So out of these skills for Japanese DD, there's some things that really leap out at me. One being expert marksman at 1 point. That's really solid. I also like preventative maintenance, just to try to in particular when I'm fighting other DDs, um, it buffs your guns, your torpedo tubes, all your modules by 30%. Um, so you basically have it, to put it in simplified terms, 30% more HP on the module, makes them able to absorb a bit more damage before they get destroyed. One of the others, so out of these skills, the three that I would tend to run, depending on the DD, expert marksman, preventative maintenance, and incoming fire alert. I'm running the expert marksman because I'm not going to be running RPF on the build. I'll talk about that when I get there. So going up to the 2 point skills, we've got demolition expert, which has been further nerfed. Started out at 3% for, I believe, 3 points. Then it went down to 2%. Now it's just down to 1%, which, when you get through all the ways that they calculate actual fire chance when you're shooting at tier 10 ships, this has gotten much weaker. So just something to consider. Um, Swift fish. You'll hear me sometimes. I don't have all of the new names memorized, so some of the stuff, it's just an older name for me. This, I believe, I would use this skill on something like my Shiratsuyu, where the upgraded torpedoes, I'm not really happy with the reaction time on those torpedoes. It's one of the few unhappy things that I have with that DD. The same would go for Akatsuki. It shares the same torpedoes, but Akatsuki is more gun focused, so it's not as big of a deal on Akatsuki as it is Shiratsuyu. So this is definitely something that I would be looking at running for those Japanese DDs, where your reaction time starts to get obnoxiously long. Another version of basically Jack of all trades. So this one, yeah, they basically do different things. So this one's, you know, your quote more offensive features: hydro, radar, smoke, and this one is your more passive. Well, you can't even really say that, because main battery reload booster and torpedo reload is on here, so Wargaming just broke them up for whatever reason. The extra heavy AP shells, Definitely a ship that leaps out at me as something that this might be interesting on is the Royal Navy, um, the Royal Navy DDs, the German DDs, and maybe the Akazuki Haragumos, although typically you're slinging a lot of HE with those ships. But any ship that you get, you know, a real solid amount of AP that's real friendly to use, this could be a really interesting thing. Even like even a Marceau or not a Marceau, a Kleber, you could this could let you chunk down a lot of cruisers and stuff, ambushing them. Um, but it's more of a situational skill, not a direct must-have. Out of the next point, priority target. I usually never ran priority target that much anyway, unless I was doing like some sort of scouting build for competitive. Um, and really all I would be looking at is how many people look at me when I get spotted in a competitive battle, and it basically gives you a quick and dirty idea of how many ships are actually on that flank able to look at you. It's not precise, and that's why I don't I don't rate priority target as high as some other players do. I figure if people are gonna see a DD, they're gonna shoot at a DD. So something like incoming fire alert, which specifically why I prefer IFA over PT, is the game still has a rendering delay where there's almost a half a second where the shells have actually fired. They just haven't rendered on the screen yet. IFA will go off the moment that they're actually fired in game. So you end up with basically an extra half second to begin your dodge. So this lets you be more proactive dodging, whereas priority target, you just see who's actually looking at you. You can't tell if, you know, they're behind an island, they can't shoot you or whatever. Next one, last stand. I still tend to run last stand on most of my destroyer builds, especially with the way carriers are working, where they're able to potentially strike you multiple times over and over again. It's to me, it gets more risky when you're dealing with CV matchmaking. You might not be able to stealth up in time. Um, and it's just risky to, um, in general, just to be running without last stand, in my opinion, with CVs running around with the way that they are. 3-point skills. This one is basically basic firing training, but it's been nerfed a bit by the reload buff has been cut in half, so you're only looking at 5% off your reload time rather than 10%. So that really slashes into some of the effectiveness of this skill. I used to run basic firing training over certain types of builds, particularly on some of my Japanese destroyer builds. In particular, Akatsuki, Yagumo. So this is something that I'm still toying with. What's going to be better? You know, torpedo armament expertise, which is still the full 10% off your torpedo reload. Or if I'm running a gun build, is that 5% off the reload still going to be worth it? And not too sure right now. So for now, I'm gonna be running torpedo armament expertise. Adrenaline rush, instead of being a 2-point skill, it's a 3-point skill. Adrenaline rush is just a really solid skill. I actually agree with this move. It basically was a gimme at 2 points. Even at 3, it's just a really good skill. Now, there are times that you might be able to get away with not taking this skill. For example, if you're playing a ship where you have a lot of smoke, like Yu Yang, you might be able to get away from actually running adrenaline rush just because you have so many resources at hand that you can play around not actually using or losing a bunch of your HP as the game goes on. And by doing that, you're, you know, I mean, if you don't lose HP as the game goes on, adrenaline rush becomes, basically a point trap. So with this skill, you're relying on the fact that you're going to, in a controlled manner, bleed HP over the course of the game, and it will gradually increase your DPM. If you're not planning on losing HP, maybe Adrenaline Rush isn't for you, and that frees up another pick for you. IFHE, I'm still really on the fence about IFHE on a lot of DDs, particularly some of the gunboats, the Russian gunboats, particularly Khabarovsk, simply because it makes your guns effective against cruisers. What I mean by that, your HE will be able to penetrate, the bows and sterns of cruisers, and it really begins to open those ships up to levels of damage that you otherwise wouldn't have. The issue is that the fire chance it's brutal. I mean, your fire chance is cut in half, and even with, the disabled demolition expert skill, you're not really going to be able to recover that. So while this lets you put a lot of pressure on cruisers, as a DD gunboat player, it will not let you put that kind of gun pressure on battleships. Now that may not be as big of a deal for something like Khabarovsk, where you can just, use your torpedoes against enemy battleships, either YOLOing them or, just getting in a position where you can make them walk into your torpedoes. But it becomes an issue where this is very much a skill that I run situationally. If I'm in, for example, clan battles or something where there's going to be a limited number of battleships, and there's typically going to be a lot of cruisers running around, IFHE is something that I probably will consider running on certain gunboats. Otherwise, just the fire chance, it makes your boat too situational as a gunboat. If you're not able really to penetrate the armor on a battleship at your tier, the only way that you can damage it then is either getting the broadside and using AP, or hope that you get fire chance, and this just crushes your fire chance. So moving on, Superintendent. In general, most of the games are decided before a fourth consumable becomes available. Even in competitive, I stopped taking numbers ago, but it was something like 87% of my competitive games were decided before that I could use that fourth consumable. Is there uses for it? Yeah, you could be running a competitive strategy where you're just running a full-on smoke build. So you're chaining smokes, you're running jack of all trades, you're running everything you can to make this the biggest smoke screen, with the most amount of time on it, or the most deployment time. You know, typically when you're doing that, you're going to be looking at just a couple options here. Either the Gearing, Summers, or Yu Yang typically are the destroyers you're going to see with a smoke composition. So something to consider. Other other uses for it would be, you know, the European DDs, maybe the Royal Navy DDs, where you're trying to pick up the extra in those DDs, particularly the extra repair party. But for a torpedo boat with the Japanese DDs, I tend to stay away from concealment expert, superintendent. The the last 3-point skill that I tend to bring is survivability expert. Coming through here, getting on the 4th point. This one really is going to decide a lot of the core functions of your DD. So the Russian gunboats, you're going to be looking at running AFT or main battery and AA expert. I don't know why they couldn't just continue with AFT, since it's pretty much the same thing, but whatever. So you're gonna, a lot of your gunboats are still gonna be running AFT. Some of the stuff that can flip-flop would be things like your French DDs, the Khabarovsk, things like that. If you're choosing to drop concealment expert and just play more long-range harassing DD, I typically don't do that with the Khabarovsk or any of the other French DDs, but it is an option. The guns are pretty solid. I just think that you start to lose some impact once you get further out there. Now, the one that sticks out to me as one that you may want to run AFT over concealment would be Mogador, because for whatever reason it's got a shorter gun range than Khabarovsk, and so typically when I'm speccing my captains out, I'll take my Mogador captain, and my Mogador captain and my Marceau captain will be the same. They won't have concealment expert, but they will have AFT, and that's one way that I set things up to have some synergy in between ships. This skill, Swift and Silence, this one's, it's gonna be a bit of an odd duck for me. I don't see, I see this as for randoms, as a band-aid skill for a torpedo boat, primarily. And what I mean by that is, you should be watching the minimap enough that you're watching to see where ships are heading, and you're using your reload to constantly stay ahead of the enemy on something fast like a Shimakaze. At the extra 8% should never really be needed to get in front of cruisers and battleships in particular. Where this skill could become more interesting is the slower DDs, Kagero, Yagumo, the Royal Navy destroyers, although it's going to hurt their ability to, no, it's not really going to change anything for them, you know, playing in open water gunboating, because they're just going to lose the speed that they would have when they're concealed. It would become a factor, losing the gun DPM in their smoke, and basically it would cancel out basic firing training for them. So I'm not 100% sold on that. Now competitively, this becomes more of a skill that I think you're going to see more people looking at. And what I mean by that is, in competitive, DDs are focusing a lot more on cap control than they are actual damage focus. So you know, doing a bunch of damage, stuff like that is good for your team, but it's a much bigger responsibility trying to control the points gain and control the points pressure on the enemy team. So getting out to a cap quicker, um, that could be something that's you know, becomes important. And you know, being able to stack you know, your engine boost with this, and doing the last minute dash around the map to take, you know, as many capture points as you could. um, I could see a use for this skill. um, so this one, I'm leaning towards random battles. It's more of a points trap, unless you're in a really slow DD where you need every scrap of speed that you can get. But even then, I don't really see myself using this with Kagero, Yagumo, and the other slower DDs at this time. I think that, you know, my map awareness and just constantly moving to get into a better launch position is going to be better than just a flat out 8% faster ship when I'm not detected. Uh, and I mean, you're still going to end up with the issue with torpedo boats, where if the enemy team just turns around and runs all game away from you, the 8% isn't going to really make any major difference for that game. You're still going to have a crap game. So that's you know, a large part of the reason why I'm like, 4 points is a very expensive skill. Um, I just don't see it being as critical for randoms. I see this as something that's going to be more valuable competitively. Moving on to the next one, radio location. Um, you guys know my thoughts on it if you've watched my videos for a long time. In general, I don't like giving any sign to my location away, or keeping it as low profile as possible. The reason being, um, a a destroyer player that's just in random battles, if they're not at my skill level, I'm probably going to beat them in a duel anyway. Um, the choice becomes, you know, the destroyer players that are at my skill level and higher. These people are going to be able to use their minimap and use the fact that they're located to pretty quickly and fairly accurately um, counter locate me, um, based on, you know, the position of their teammates on the minimap. And I'm basically using a skill that's, you know, they're able to use against me if they have that level of skill. Um, so I'm not wild about that, particularly from a tort boat standpoint. Uh, Players get more nervous when they see that they're located. They know that something with RPF is close by, and you know, for whatever reason, a lot of random players like to run RPF on their torpedo boats, and it just makes the targets a little more jittery. I have seen increases in my average damage by dropping RPF, and usually I would be speccing more gun focus, especially on a Japanese DD, before I would be picking up expert marksman for the 2-point skill, and be picking up maybe basic firing training to compensate for um, not having, you know, the bearing of the closest ship to me. So the idea being that the faster turret traverse is going to make up the difference, enabling me to move away from RPF. Fearless Brawler. This one, it can be a good skill. Um, I do have some misgivings about it. Um, So I've played this one a bit with my Kaba, and I do love the basically the built-in basic firing training. Uh, the bad con to it is the 5% to your detectability range. So when you start running, and I'll show you when I build my Kaba, it starts to get really expensive with your build, um, because you're going to want to run AFT already. You're going to want to run Brawler, and now, you know, you're most likely going to want BFT, even though it's um, reduced in its effectiveness. You're going to want to run Adrenaline Rush. Um, you might want to run Superintendent on Kaba for the extra heal or extra smoke. And you also would like to get Survivability Expert. It starts to get really expensive with these skills. So, and in particular, the 5% to your detectability range, um, really where some of these ships like Kaba and Khabarovsk can shine is actually its concealment, where you're getting closer in than a light cruiser typically would, and be able to punish things, um, from a distance that people aren't. You're just going to catch things. So I've got a video that'll be going up fairly soon with a Kaba, where most of the game I'm just sailing around behind a Shimakaze that's scouting and torping in front of me, and he never bumps into a DD, but if he does, I'm right there to clean that DD up, and that's something to consider, because you're going to be looking at typically longer range shots, uh, running Fearless Brawler, than if you're not. Now, if you're not running it, you're losing the 10% off your gun. So there's some clear choices here that a gunboat is going to need to try to make, and I think in a lot of cases this is good for a gunboat to run, but there are some considerations with it, particularly on Khabarovsk. I'm more on the fence with Khabarovsk because you also have main battery reload booster, um, where you can utilize that to help you in those situations where you need that, where that extra DPM is a must-have. Um, so again, kind of on. I really want to love this skill. It's just the detectability starts to push some of these DDs more into a build where, like a concealment light cruiser or something, can start to approach their levels of concealment, and it makes me wonder at that point, is it better to actually bring a light cruiser at that point, or is there something that this can do that a light cruiser can't do? So there's my thoughts right there for Fearless Brawler. I think that's probably the easiest way to sum it up. Concealment Expert, basically, yes, number one. And she's singing the Mickey Mouse right now. So if you're like in a stereotypical DD, you're capping, you're doing your torpedo boat thing, anything like actually playing like a destroyer instead of like an open water gunboat, Concealment Expert is still going to be a huge skill for you to have. I'm just going to throw it on my ship right now. Nothing's really changed with it. Still 10%, still a 4-point skill. So moving on, last but not least, Dazzle. Dazzle is another skill that I only see me using this in a competitive environment, and even that I'm a little sketchy on, because there's a lot of times that I get away with avoiding shots because the enemy ship shooting me has such tight dispersion that I'm able to dodge hard enough that everything misses and I'm able just to get away scot-free. Dazzle, as I understand it, opening up the enemy ship's dispersion by 20%, it might make dodging in if the shot cluster lands around my ship, I might take less damage. Well, I'll go so far as to say I'll probably take less damage. But in the cases where I make somebody completely, you know, misinterpret what my ship's actually doing, and they literally aim incorrectly at my ship, I have a increased chance at eating, you know, a stray shell or two every time. So really for randoms, I'm probably never going to run this skill. For competitive, maybe, because players are typically going to be a little more wise to aiming at a DD that's skilled at evading. And you know, if they aim correctly, you know, obviously the 20% off their dispersion is going to most likely be in your favor. But it is an expensive skill, and if I see potentials where you could, if you know that an enemy DD player is running Dazzle, they're probably giving up something else competitively. So they're gonna be running Survivability Expert. You know, they're gonna be looking at, you know, are they giving up, you know, torpedo armament expertise? Are they giving up, you know, basic firing training? And if there's a weakness, you might be able to just go in there and assassinate that guy with your DD on a cap or something. So this is something that can also lead to some pitfalls as something like a clan battle season plays out. If you're able to kind of sniff out a guy's build that you're sure that he's running Dazzle, and you're not, your ship typically will be more combat capable in another aspect depending on your build. So just some things to think about with Dazzle. So I've got 3 points left here. So let's see. I am gonna go on ahead and see, this is Shimakaze. I'm gonna go on ahead and go Swift Fish and preventative maintenance and round that out. So just try to speed my torpedoes up as much as possible. I've already got a ton of flooding chance on Shimakaze torpedoes, so I don't really think that I need more flooding chance. The choice really then becomes incoming fire alert or preventative maintenance, and I prefer to have my guns and modules as tanky as I can. So that's gonna be my hard choice there. So don't be like I did a couple games. I forgot to actually master the skills, and disaster occurred when I jumped into a battle. So quickly gonna take a look at Kaba, since there's some stuff there to discuss. So with Kaba, don't really need the turret traverse. Here, I do like incoming fire alert to try to manage what's shooting at me. Okay, so they're recommending that. I still tend to run Kaba with Repair Party. I still run it a lot more like a light cruiser than I do a DD. Because of that, I run Last Stand because CVs hate everyone. I want Survivability Expert here. We'll skip this for now. So Survivability Expert, I need AFT because the gun range on this, if you've seen the Kaba video that I've posted, uh, you've got battleships now with secondaries that are 12.4 kilometers. It doesn't leave you a whole lot of room to shoot up these battleships from outside of their secondary range, and it's going to make this ship uh, a lot harder to deal with something like a Kurfürst that can withstand a lot of HE spam if it's able to ride out the fire damage. And since you're losing, fire damage, it starts to really become an issue with the ship. So taking a look here, 9.7 by running Brawler, you're looking at 10.2 kilometer concealment. You're getting fairly close to being spotted by a Des Moines, and that's what I mean by, at a certain level, running this skill. Is there something that is there a cruiser that's going to be more effective? Maybe, maybe not. Um, it is what it is. For now, I'm going to put Brawler on there. So let's take a look at IFHE. If you look, the HE shell penetration is 22 millimeters. Picking IFHE, that's going to get us up to 27, and that's going to get us through all the cruiser bows and stern. So you're able to punish, that bow tanking Des Moines, that's camping an island, or shoot up any of the cruisers that are out and about. Some of the ones that you're going to have a harder time with are the Russian cruisers, where they have the 50 millimeter ice bow. Just because you're obviously not going to pen 50 millimeters, and on those, maybe particularly the super cruisers, if you're seeing like Iron Curtain, stuff like that, Demolition Expert may be a better choice. So just throwing that out there. So IFHE last stand, survivability expert, AFT, concealment expert on Kaba. I just don't think you're getting there. 8.7. I mean, it's nice, but this is gonna get expensive quick, because you're probably, well, if you're running concealment expert, well, just for shits and giggles, since it's all free. So you're looking at 9.2 kilometer concealment, but let's see, we've got 3 points left. So, I mean, what do you pick? Do you pick BFT? Well, you would probably pick Adrenaline Rush, would probably be your last skill. And that leaves you with a ship that, has, 9% fire chance. You still got your 13.5 kilometer gun range, so that's good. 9.2 kilometer concealment, which that is all right for what Kaba is, but in general, I think that I'm going to run, at least for now, Fearless Brawler, and run Demolition Expert. Then with the last 2 points, probably run so I would actually probably run preventative maintenance and consumable specialist for, oh, wait a minute, where's the repair party? It doesn't give you, well, that's dumb. That's actually something of note. You can't actually buff the cooldown on repair party, if I'm looking at this correctly. Maybe it's something is, maybe there's a bug or something on here, but as I'm reading through here, I don't see anything that actually buffs the repair party for DD. So hydro, radar, smoke, engine boost, and this one is fighters, spotting aircraft, defensive fire, main battery reload, and torpedo reload. So, So yeah, I specifically would be looking at which one of these would boost the repair party to enable me to keep going faster. Maybe I run super heavy AP since demolition expert's gonna be less effective. Maybe I switch to using more AP. I mean, worst case scenario, I can run preventative maintenance and expert marksman and just have faster turret traverse. It's not really gonna hurt my ship if I'm doing that. So that's sort of the builds that I'm looking at with Khaba. And let's see, last but not least, probably quickly do a Holland, which doesn't have smoke. So typically my Holland, I'm still gonna run preventative maintenance, particularly on a Holland where I'm looking to protect my AA as much as possible. Holland can lose its AA pretty quickly. I do run last stand again since I don't have any escape from CVs. Really want to buff my mobility as much as possible. Survivability expert. I gotta double check my Khaba build, see if I had adrenaline rush on it. I just realized that. So concealment expert, definitely taking it. So take a look at my torpedoes. 85 seconds. Now this is only going to take 8.5 seconds off my torpedoes. Honestly, that's not that much. So I'm going to take adrenaline rush over torpedo armament expertise, and for the AA buff, I'm going to be taking main battery. I'm going to take BFT. I'm just going to keep calling that BFT. That's what they should have kept it. So we've got 3 points left. So got a couple options here. Yeah, they don't say anything about that either. So I am leaning towards Superintendent for this build for the maximum amount of HP. I've got the extra HP with Survivability Expert. Pick up the 4th heal, plus that gives me an extra speed boost to run around the game as much as I can with speed boost. So that's going to be what I consider a pretty decent Holland build. It's more survivability focused than damage focus. You could easily drop this for torpedo armament expertise and get a really fast torpedo reload. I just think as battles are play out, typically you're moving so much to your next launch point that you know, I just don't see myself being able to launch within that 8.5 second window that torpedo armament expertise provides on a consistent basis. Now, if this was, you know, 110 seconds or something like that, yeah, I would consider running torpedo armament expertise over Superintendent, because that's a long enough distance that or a long enough amount of time that I'm going to be using that window of time that torpedo armament expertise gives me. So there's some choice there, and that's my choices on how I would rather go about spending those points. I just don't think I'm going to be able to get as much out of 8.5 seconds off my torpedo reload as I will the extra consumables, where I'm going to be a lot more aggressive burning engine boost and defensive fire and things like that as the game plays out. So going to go ahead and master that one. Let's see. Any other oddballs? Oh, Daring. Daring's more of a hybrid gunboat DD, so we'll go ahead and give this one a rundown. So we definitely don't need grease to gears. Flooding, not really. Not really getting anything off that consume. Hey, what in the world's going on? You're howling like a dog. Yeah, we're not calling the dogs in, guys. Oh, do you want in, buddy? Do you want in? Okay, here you go. What happened? Is your tablet having a heart attack? Yeah, you're okay. You're okay. Yeah, fish. Good job. So, sorry, I'm getting off track right here. So, yeah, that's a shark. So first two 1-point skills going to be probably going to pick preventative maintenance. Yeah, that's a jellyfish. You are going to completely distract Daddy, aren't you? You're working on those words, and Daddy wants you learning those words. Yeah, turtle. So we're doing last stand here. I'm going to just make this quick because distractions. And I'm already 47 minutes into this video. Yeah. So I'm going to pick survivability expert, concealment expert, obviously. I don't need more gun range. Gonna go on ahead and pick adrenaline rush, superintendent, maximize my HP on the daring. Yeah, a fish. So we got 3 points left. I could drop it into main battery, but I'm gonna go ahead and drop it into. That demolition expert is so weak. You know what? I'm gonna drop it into to reload because it will give me a few more shells on target, and I'm just gonna rely on the fact that more shells is going to translate into potentially more fires just through more shells on target, and that is going to round out my build. Maybe for the last 2 points, I might run consumables enhancement. Swift fish is another good one here because I mean you'd be getting that torp speed up to a pretty reasonable level where that's going to make those torpedoes pretty nasty. Yeah, 1.3 kilometer concealment at that's gonna be spicy. So 68 knots. Yeah, that's what I would probably do with that last set of with that last 2 points on this captain is into swift fish, because I mean that's gonna turn those things into DD killers. So gonna go on ahead and master that, and I'm gonna cut this video off before I get any more distracted. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them below. Hope you're having a good night, and I will talk to you later.